Hi, and thanks for joining us. This is True Patriot Love, TPL Media. I'm Mike. Please don't hesitate to visit us at TPL Media or download our fancy schmancy app. You can find it on the App Store and also at the Google Play Store. And you'll want to get that because every day we come out with new content, podcasts that are focused on Canadian discussion, like we're going to have today, in fact. And to do that, I came up with a topic that's been sort of on my mind, and I think many Canadians' minds, certainly in the West Coast, and asked our very own Jeremy Grimaldi to chime in on it with me. Jeremy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
If you don't know Jeremy, he is I often referred to as one of Canada's last remaining real journalists. And he focuses on crime, among many things, but always with an eye on what's happening here in Canada from a crime perspective. Thanks, man. I appreciate this. So today, let me read this to you, if I may. This might get us going. A conversation starter that I wrote down this morning. Okay. Pardon my grammar. Decriminalization may reduce stigma and arrests, but if overdoses and deaths caused by overdose remain high, public disorder rises, and treatment access lags, then the policy isn't delivering what Canadians were promised when we started these safe injection sites and decriminalization of drugs, certainly in Vancouver. And that was my opening thought on this, Jeremy.
That was your opening thought. Yeah, I'm really of two minds, and I dare say that it's one of those issues that it's a real knuckle puck. I don't know how you'd go about dealing with it. This has been tried. I think at this point it may be time to try something else. But I think when this sort of tactic won out, we weren't in COVID, and COVID's changed the game. And I really think that since COVID, the game's changed, and I think it needs to be looked at again. Again, I'm not in favor of one side or the other. What I do know is that drugs have changed as well. Fentanyl has entered into the system, the stream, if you will, and it's changed the game. COVID changed the game, and I don't know if it's working. I don't believe it is working. You want to be fair to everyone, especially because I think we can all agree that abusers, users of drugs are in pain. They're hurt in some way, and they're trying to relieve their pain. So to criminalize it seems wrong. Having said that, you look at some of the cities in the United States, and what's happened since they've gone to the progressive side of things. It seems to have spiraled out of control a little bit, and I don't want that to happen in Canada. So I just feel like a different tactic needs to be instituted.
Well, the one tactic that has been tried for sure is in Vancouver, safe injection sites and decriminalization has become a part of the problem, or part of the solution that they thought for this problem. But having said that, 40,000 overdoses, 80% of those showed fentanyl in the mix. So you're right, the drugs have changed. And in a short time, since COVID, with real a voracious attack on society, fentanyl has shown up even more than we, I guess, ever anticipated or certainly ever wanted. But the problem that I have with this is, if BC still records some of the highest overdose death rates in Canada, is this really working? I mean, is that system working? And so, like you, that's one approach to it, that we will work with the people that are suffering. And I would agree with you. I think that, drug use is endemic of mental health issues, struggle, and pain. So we don't want people going through more struggle and more pain. However, we also don't want to aid them in going further down that horrible rabbit hole of drug abuse. So now, you mentioned beforehand, Alberta had a really forceful hand in this.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been a backlash against this way of dealing with things, and I get it. No one wants to force things on people, because another old sort of adage or thought process is that people can't get help until they're ready to get help. So forcing them into drug rehab seems like you're kind of setting them up to fail in many ways. And these are things that you have to consider when you have an approach. Having said all that, trying something new, especially in this part of the way we administer help to these people, you can't sort of ignore that, because I feel like the problem is spiraled out of control, and everyone's afraid to talk about it because it involves a strategy that we've attempted, that we all seem to sort of agree on, but it seems like it's failed. So you're sort of caught in limbo here. You
It's
don't
so
want
interesting
to.
you say that.
Yeah.
We did kind of choose this. There was many ways that decriminalization in British Columbia could have been voted down. It could have been reversed. But Canadians, we got behind what we thought would be a solution for people in society that we should be caring for.
Yeah, and you look at what happened. I don't know if you know the case of Portugal. They decriminalized drugs, and it worked for a long time. But even there, things have changed since COVID, and since new drugs have hit the streets, man-made drugs, which aren't the same as the way drugs used to be. In a lot of ways, they've become more addictive. They become more addictive, but they've also become a lot more painful to those who use the drugs and those who suffer from the crime as a result of those drugs.
It's funny that you say this, because one of the things that it also becomes endemic of having decriminalized is that it makes the position of somebody on the streets an easier transition. So now we have people gravitating to the streets. Fentanyl causing these problems where you see people just hunched over and unable to react to anything. We have people overdosing. Calgary was the example, actually, that came to my mind when I was thinking about this. I thought, wow, Vancouver tried it this way, and Calgary did it a completely different way. And I had a chance to speak to the police a few weeks ago out in Calgary when I was there, and I actually approached them on the street, Jeremy, and my conversation was, wow, I was here in October. Here I am back, in the new year, just weeks later, essentially. And there was such a difference to what was visible on the street and what drug use and, apparent crime would be possible, seemed to have dissipated or disappeared entirely after they did a mass arrest to get people off the streets and get them into treatment.
Yeah, and again, this is some of the stuff that a lot of people are of two minds about, right? Anytime you go into a park and there's homeless encampments and drug users and people with mental health problems, you may feel a certain way, that something needs to be done. Now, watching your local 6 o'clock news when the police move in to disturb, disrupt, remove the encampments, you may have a different feeling when watching images of police doing these things. And I think this is what as Canadians we're feeling torn about. Forcing people, heavy-handedness towards people who are vulnerable, people who have been left behind by society, people who can't go anywhere to get help. So we've sort of removed all the systems for them to get help. We've left them stranded, and now we're criminalizing them for doing what any human would do, is to find shelter in public places. So you really, it's a real quandary, and I don't know what to do about it, but I feel like a different tact should be given a chance, because we're at sort of a, I would say we're at a crisis, but no one wants to say that because of a whole slew of things that we've already spoken about.
Next to my house is a retirement community, and it's run by the region, and I have some really amazing neighbors there. Many of them are in their 70s and 80s, trying to stay active, and they're just wonderful people. Sometimes they make comments on what I should be doing with my yard, but that's fine. If you told me that the region was going to move these people out and put a safe injection site next to my house, I would literally have a nervous breakdown, Jeremy. I'm being honest with you, because the result of this in other cities is destruction of the parks, the drug use and drug abuse and drug sale, and in some cases, violent interactions happen in places where there was parks, schools, and your average everyday neighborhood. And suddenly it's turned upside down. I have to take that position because there are people in Canada that just experience that. They're experiencing it in Toronto, where drug dealers are even being spotted inside the facilities, I understand, allegedly. Our lawyers asked me to say that. But there is this obvious problem that comes with this kind of treatment that is meant to be caring and loving and embracing. And you're right. I think this is the quandary that Canadians have. I certainly do. I feel it in my bones that there must be a hybrid of this. And I wonder, really, when I spoke to the police in Calgary, and by the way, hats off to them, because what the police force did was they put a group together that has a social worker, it has a medical attendant, and experienced police, nobody under the age of 40 in this group. So you have a kinder, gentler, more understanding, more experienced officer of the law alongside medical and social work. And that's how this is now handled on the streets of Calgary. I promise you that it was a notable difference. And so I don't know if it was really as heavy-handed as we feel that it was, and I'd love to get more comment on that. But what I did notice was a difference on the streets. I mean, it was highly noticeable, man.
Yeah, and part of my feeling towards taking a different approach is rooted in the fact that the problem, if left alone, again, I don't know statistics. I know that if left alone, the problem is just going to get worse. So if you leave it alone, it's destructive to the person, the individual. It's destructive to the community. It's destructive to society, and most important, it's spiritually destructive to us as human beings. To allow people in pain to wander the streets in the freezing cold, and I just. We're all humans, and especially since COVID, I think we all understand that things are tenuous. Our mental health is tenuous. Our ability to pay the rent, to pay our mortgages, to stay homed and housed, it's all tenuous, and it's getting more tenuous. So no one wants to have a heavy hand, but I don't think the situation's untenable.
Yeah, I agree with you. It just feels now that we need to do something. And so somewhere along the way, and the reason I bring this conversation for you and I to chat about is because inevitably drugs are crime. How they get into the country, how we distribute them. We just had Sam Cooper on, as you know, talking about how fentanyl has, seeped into every part of Canadian life, whether it's financially, through the drug trade, through people on the street or people in their homes becoming addicted to these drugs. It is a crime that is really feeding the lowest common denominator in society, somebody who is hurt, challenged by their living situation. BC overdose deaths rate among the highest in the G7. That's a stat that got me as well. On the global scene, we should be doing something. And I think, and maybe you can talk to this has happened in many preventative things that we try in this country and other countries too. And I think Portugal is in the middle of this. We did this thing where we created a law before the system was ready to be put into place. The treatment options, the way to approach the neighborhoods, the way to set these up, the way to decriminalize, all of that seemed to happen out of order a little bit. And that's left people on the streets, like in Vancouver, the most overdoses in the G7.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but if you're ever on social media, and I guess it's sort of become the thing to maybe ignore the problem. Let's just sort of see them, recognize them, but don't do anything about it.
Right.
And then you go on social media, and sometimes you'll have a user or an influencer or whatever walk down Vancouver's Skid Row, East End, and you see this sort of pain and suffering there, and you're just taken aback, thinking this is the solution we've come up with. This is what our plan is, just to allow people to live like this. It's far worse in LA and in Seattle and Oregon, and so you kind of just wonder. I think we came to a sort of collective idea that we should allow people the ability to ingest drugs safely and securely, but I don't know if anyone signed up for the implication. And the implication before COVID was one thing. I think maybe that was more manageable, but since COVID, it's become, in my opinion, unmanageable. And I feel like something should be done.
This is a really interesting quote, and I read this, I think, in the Star the other day. This isn't harm reduction, it's harm displacement. You can't decriminalize addiction and underfund recovery. That is the truth. You can't normalize use and rational treatment. That's also very true, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's naive or silly of me to speak as a father and as a parent, but this goes against any rule as a father or a parent. You can't allow your children, not that these people are our children, but there are countrymen and women, but you can't allow individuals to keep harming themselves over and over, and especially people in pain, and expect the situation to get better. I mean,
I would agree 100%. Yeah,
common sense says it's going to get worse, and it does. So to do it is inhumane.
It's so funny you say that. The last line in this quote is, "Compassion without system isn't compassion; it's abandonment." And that's kind of what it feels like to me. We set up these people to be abandoned, and the harder route is not necessarily fun, like you point out. But I think something needs to be done here. I don't know that this is working, and I hope it doesn't spread across the country as a policy or a model, because the model has put Vancouver into a dumpster fire.
Yeah, and the saddest part, or the worst part, is that it's not polite society doesn't discuss this problem, because you sound like an uneducated, not a bigot, but someone who sits up on his high horse, because if you're someone who has housing, and say, oh, I don't want them in my park, I don't want them walking around and screaming and threatening people as they walk down the street, you look heartless. So the problem doesn't get discussed, and in turn doesn't get dealt with.
I hope that we come up with a solution here. And by the way, I would recommend you use the comments if there's something you've seen around the world, or a suggestion that you have. I promise you we'll revisit this, because this is a model that is trying to be replicated. It is trying to reproduce itself. And before it does, I really think we need to have some discussion. For example, maybe there's some countries in this world that really are dealing with this, and they're getting opioid addiction off the streets and under control and getting people back to living. Maybe we need to create the right think tank to do that as a nation, and stop experimenting. Jeremy, I can't believe that I dragged you into a conversation about this, but I think it's important. And it's interesting, but I pick the people that I speak to about these things internally, and you seem like a really good fit for this, because I know that you have that compassion within you. It reads on you, and also that you see the ramifications every day doing what you do. So I really appreciate this.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and it's great to talk about something that's under discussed.
All right. Well, listen, we'll encourage you to reach out. Jeremy, where can people find out more about what you're writing and what you're following?
You can find out about me through Metroland Tourstar. So you can Google my name, and you'll find all my stories. There's also an email notification when one of my stories comes up if you're interested.
Oh, that's a good way to do it. All right. Well, thank you so much. Speaking of which, don't hesitate to support what we're doing here. You can go to tplmedia.ca, subscribe there, and maybe even sign up and help keep the wheels on the cart here. Thanks. We'll see you next time.